Hello everyone, welcome to the Monsoon 2022's Sea Conversations titled Drawing Out Natures. I'm Rohit Muzumdar from the School of Environment and Architecture. This is the fifth conversation of Drawing Out Natures. This series foregrounds the role of imaginations in inventing worlds and also how we come to understand them by constructing realities based on specific ways of seeing, listening, and sensing. It is an engagement towards making visible the invisible relations between natures and the natures of human and modern human agency. We delve into the drawing out of natures to advance the imaginaries of engagement with contemporary ecological crises and climate emergencies, and the contests that come to erode and expand socio-spatial claims in the shared ecologies of our worlds. I extend a warm welcome to each one of you who has joined this fifth conversation, reclaiming our lost natural building practices with Biju Bhaskar. This online series has been co-curated and supported by the Shared Ecologies program of the Shama Foundation, along with ongoing support of Urban Center, Mumbai. Welcome, Biju. Thank you for joining us. Biju is from Kerala, has been born in Kerala to a farmer's family. He stopped his studies at a conventional architecture college and traveled extensively in different parts of Indian villages. For 1.5 years, he worked under a tribal master, making driftwood sculptures in Khajuraho. He founded Thannal Natural Homes in 2011, a natural building awareness group, and is still continuing his inner journey into the self-study and earthen shelter movement in India. In the last decade, he has spent his time in research and documentation of indigenous shelters, spreading awareness through taking classes, workshops, and publishing articles, books, and videos on natural buildings. This lecture offers an insight into various native building practices, building techniques that frame the orientation of Thannal, a natural building awareness group. It discusses ways in which these techniques can be integrated within the present-day construction practice, including wall systems, roofing, surface finishes, and allied aspects. Welcome, Biju. It's really a pleasure to have you here in conversation with us, and we really look forward to engaging with your work. You can start with your presentation, and after the presentation, we'll engage in the conversation and open up the discussion to the audience. I'm going to switch off my camera, so in case you need me, just shout out, I'm here.
Okay. Thank you very much. Namaste. I am Biju Bhaskar. First of all, thanks to C College for giving me this opportunity. So we will get into slide presentation now. I'm just sharing the screen. First. Yeah. So about Thannal, actually, I came to Tiruvannamalai. I got remigrated from the city life and came to a village in Tamil Nadu in 2008. So we started Thannal in 2011, actually. Thannal means shade. It's a natural building awareness group. We are not at all a construction group. So we thought awareness is needed in natural building. So Thannal believes in the Indian ways of learning. the indigenous knowledge in shelter making. So what we have, so my first work I started with a sculpture called Giri Vanakam. That means bow to a mountain. So this is where I actually started my work in this village, where I started realizing after all those city life and things like that. So this sculpture, actually, I want to use lime inside that sculpture. But that time, I realized I don't know how to use lime. Uh, so that is where it all started. Like where to study, how to use lime in as a mortar and things like that. So when we ask masons, I mean the new generation masons and all, they don't know about lime. So this is the another view of that sculpture. Then these two books was my inspiration, where I took really a thought where which I want to do natural building. So first book is by David Godman, Living by the Words of Bhagavan, where which Ramana Maharshi is like working with this one of his disciple, his ashram, where he was using mud and lime and all those things. And second book by Nader Khalili, Ceramic Houses and Earth Architecture. So Nader Khalili is an Iranian architect, where he was very much influenced by the work of Rumi, a Sufi poet. So his work was really connecting with most of the poetic words of Rumi. So that really made me think about the meditation of architecture and structures in so what is happening there is, like, whenever we want to learn about mud architecture, there was no place before. So I started learning and started understanding about mud architecture, where which a thought process came is like, why can we study about 0% cement buildings? So when I'm thinking something like, if a natural farming is happening in India, very, very interestingly, everywhere, every state, every district, it is happening. And people are using natural clothing, natural medicine. So why can natural building can happen purely? So that took me to this all complete process of journey. Last 15 years, I have been doing it. So what is natural building? When we take or think about a building, so what we are using is like mud, stone, bamboo and wood, plant and animal derivatives, lime and surki. Surki is like burnt clay, you can say. Like very normal materials, we can build a shelter. So it is not just a way of construction, but a way of living with minimal consumption of resources from nature. So thinking about that, what you're seeing behind is a wattle and dub wall, plastered with mud and lime plasters, lime arundels. So even that shape can be achieved, very, very different dimensions can be achieved through these beautiful materials. So areas of tunnel. Areas of tunnel is like, first, the main thing is like respecting an artisan. So we started learning from the artisans. So I and my wife and kids started traveling again back to the villages, and we started learning from the older masons. Second part is study and documentation. So first we study about it and we practice it and have a look and start documenting about that, because none of the documentation is very rare in India. Then revival series like the olden method, then research and development, like to the new era, how things can be reused and things like that, with publishing books and videos. So that are the main areas Thannal looks for, and how we are achieving it. So first is we study ourselves and teach others to build with local artisan and villagers. So that is through workshop, online courses, volunteering, apprenticeship. Then they build and with local materials. So the demand comes and the services. So for the farmers, artisans and masons, architects, engineers, students, they are like, it's a step towards moving a first step to sustainability. So respecting our artisan series, what we have done is we met very, very interesting artisans, very old artisans. Like this is a mason from Chettinad who does Chettinad plaster, very interesting plastering technique. So this is in Rajasthan. We were with Dawoodji and family. So we were actually studying. So we started inter-exchanging knowledge. So they come to us as well as we go to them also. And they come and teach us like that. So for 4.5 years, we studied in Rajasthan, actually, about lime, tapi, Irish, lohi plasters. So here what you are seeing, the wall is with lime plaster with surki. So they will hit the lime plaster with a wooden bat. It is called tapi plaster. So with the sound, they will understand when to stop and things like that. So it's like with the sense they work. This is Rasak ji, which we were in his mohalla. We took a workshop there as an awareness, and people came to study there. This is in Tonk, which I really lucky to see 10-year-old lime. Here in the hand, what we are seeing is a 10-year-old lime, and they are doing a complete Irish plaster on the mosque. So with him, we were there for days. And this is Ashok Ninne sir, who has written a book. I will come to that soon. This is the book, were very interesting 2 books in India. One is by Ashok Ninne sir, and the other one is History of Architecture and Ancient Building Materials in India by Satish Chandra. It's one of the classical book we can learn about. In this book, actually, we can see plant and animal derivatives, how they used in olden structures, things like that. So not only plants and animal derivatives. In plants itself, we can use the flowers, leaves, barks, root, fruits. So it's very interesting that thousands of plants can be used in architecture. So study and documentation, we used to travel and go to, this is all the articles we have written about the old homes. Like here you can see 300 here mud home in Wayanad, 150-year-old natural building in Wayanad, and indigenous knowledge behind the mud houses of Nagarkovil, wattle and cob, a different method wall system, 300-year-old in Gejjam, Mysore. Then through workshops, there are different workshops we take. Like plastering is there, 2-day common man workshops is there, 10-day natural building workshop. And one workshop we does with natural organic farmers. It's exclusive local workshop videos. Then revival workshops like Tapi, Irish Plaster. Then for students also, awakening workshop for students. Then we have formed a app called Thannal app is also launched last year, where people can study natural building through online. So there are ebook we have released called Weaving Wall, as well as the hard copy is also is coming up soon. It will be in 3 languages, regional languages also we are including. And we are doing a back home book. Presently, this work is going on. It's a complete documentation of 15 years of knowledge, how a roof, from foundation to roof and plasters, different methods from India, and about all the plants and animal derivatives, what we have used, and all the formulas, what we have gone through. So this work is in progress and we are launching. We have done, the first part has been launched, and second part is a roof is coming up next month. So this is a video song we have done for awareness called Adobe Girl. It's in YouTube in our channel. So there is one more song we have done is Coach. This is entirely shot in Rajasthan with the lime artisans. Actually, their kids and all acted in that song. So revival series, we started many revival series. In one is like water tanks, what you're seeing now. This water tank towards right is done in our campus without using a drop of cement, because our campus doesn't have a single drop of cement. We have entirely used natural materials and lime and things like that. This water tank is our first experiment we have done. This is a lime tank where which we cure lime. And above what you're seeing is actually made using mud only, then lime plaster. So in behind you can see the Rajasthan old tank with a lime and surki and things like that. Then other very interesting areas are like there are different rules in architecture in natural building. So one of the roof is flat mud roof. So it has been from Kerala to Himalayas also we have seen in Gujarat, many places, Assam. Flat mud roof is still existing, and very interesting, very simple method of doing intermediate floors as well as exposed also. This is one of the 300-year-old cob 2-story building where you can see the intermediate floors are made using flat mud roof. So leaves are kept for the vapor barrier, then the mud they will pour. This is the house of Devapriyan. He has done this flat mud roof for his home using karingota leaves. Another method is Kiru. It's a Rajasthan method where which a lot of plants, stems and you can do flat mud roof like that. Madras Terrace is a very interesting, another flat roof. This all roof doesn't use concrete at all. So this is with the wooden beams and using brick and lime mortar, they will do it. Huridi flat roof. It's actually 150-year-old building in Palani. Still, this roof is doing fine. And Bagra flat roof using lime waste. So it's a typical type of roofing in Rajasthan. Limecrete roof. It's there in Indian code of practice. This limecrete roof is the old and very interesting method. This is in the Thannal campus itself. We have done that roof. So there are, apart from flat roof, there are many different leaf varieties. So we used to experiment walls with leaves also. So here what you're seeing is a studio space which the walls are made using coconut leaf and on top palm leaf. So this entire building is completely made using coconut leaf. So lemongrass is another type of roofing material which will last for 8 and 9 years. Sugarcane leaf roof. Viral is one very amazing material. We don't know its botanical name, but this grass will sustain for 35, 40 years. So this is one of the recent work we have done in Attapadi, Kerala. So this is for a farmer. This entire home is made using cob and wattle and dub. Wattle and dub is one method. There are different methods in wall system also using mud. So this side is from the kitchen, what you're seeing. So these are all clay renders, like from the different mud, we used to take clay out of it and using river sand and, I mean, not river sand, sand in mud itself we can use and do amazing plasters with it. This is the interior of the home. So this is done by, I mean, the house owner and his family itself is doing that home with few workers actually. So this is the owner, this is the farmer. He's doing his own home. This is his family. And what you're seeing in right side is the balcony. This have actually 2-bedroom home. The another project is community seed bank. So here also we have used cob. So here what you are seeing is a stems of virali is kept inside the cob walls, like layers. So it's a very traditional practice in villages where which termites won't come. If you keep each one in different layers, termite won't come and attack. So this is an attic space where they store seeds. So what you're seeing here is bamboo and terracotta flooring. This is the main door. This is the earth bag home in our campus. So here we have tried a different sandwich roof plus adobe roof for the roofing material. Then this is after doing the finishes. Like we have done tried Irish plaster on top. These are few works from those who came here and studied from us. Akila is an interior designer with his husband. She has done a 2-bedroom home, courtyard home with a flat mud roof using bamboos. Here she has used leaf like palash, flame of the forest. This is by Shipra. She's an architect who came and learned with us. And actually, she has done for her client. This is an earth bag home with a thatch roof. Professor Anida, she has done her own home by herself in this Corona period. She came and learned with us. This is her home. This is Uma Shankar, and his family came and studied, and he has done every Saturday. He's an IT professional. He came, he designed himself and done his home and completed. This guy, his name is Biju. He came with his workers to study here. He has done a 2-story cob home. He is a firefighter in Calicut Airport. So this is the end of the show. Thank you. Rohit, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Thanks, Biju. That was really lovely to see the range of things that you all are doing in your practice. Also kind of very short, simple, and kind of very clear and to the point. I was struck by a number of things. And one of the things that I was really struck by, kind of, trying to put together and all the thoughts that kind of are running through my head. One of the things that I found particularly interesting about all that you spoke was the imagination of your practice. And in identifying 5 areas of practice which structure Thannal as a form of practice. This is not simply about building buildings. That's one of the things that happen, but this is about a particular imagination of architecture that you imagine, that your practice imagines ought to spread, and therefore has several components to it. One is of respecting artisans, study and documentation, and reviving research and development and publishing. That's a very kind of 5-part imagination. It's a very interesting form of imagination of practice, because it opens out the imagination of practice towards multiple things. And I was fascinated that there is a pedagogy program in your practice, and then you're researching, but also teaching. And it's not about the buildings that only you build, but it's also those who have come and learned at this, in this pedagogical space, and how the practice kind of proliferates. At sea, this question has been important to us, and one of my colleagues articulates it in this manner. He says, my colleague Prasad Shetty, he says that around 94% of the population in India, professional architects don't cater. This includes a diversity of people, low-income households in urban areas as well as rural areas, buildings that are not built through the municipal or the formal regulatory processes of making buildings. So there's a huge range of population that architects don't cater to, and what he imagines as one of the things that see as a pedagogical institution ought to kind of take up is the idea of what he calls as a a design clinic, and I see kind of parallels in what you all are doing in your work. So that's been very interesting as a proposition and a provocation to think about the form of practice. And while I say this, I'm kind of quite curious and interested. Is that at a time when the when when the larger discussion in India seems to be um, around the fact, or around this thing that India is undergoing an urban transition, that more people are moving from villages to its cities,
But reversely
several
also. Yeah.
small ones. And here we find a practice who is kind of where somebody has moved from I'm not aware of where you move from, but I would imagine from a city to rural areas. I'm kind of
But
trying
I
to
think
situate.
every year people are moving out from the cities and they are coming back to their own
I'm coming
village.
to that. I'm coming to that. I'm trying to kind of frame this, which is,
Okay.
which is what I find, very, very, very interesting. And while that is a larger discussion, I mean, still, I mean, in the 2011 census, uh, 40%, 60% of the population is still rural. That's a huge, huge, huge population. You know, so there is some seriousness, or kind of magnitude in the scale that um, of what we are thinking about, and that move to the village is interesting. It goes counter to established narrative, but there is a magnitude of population there which is very interesting. Okay, so kind of wanted to place this in a larger context of the country, because really, in terms of explorations around the rural, there exist far and few around in architectural explorations in villages. I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm saying they're far and few in terms of architectural explorations. Okay, and there is this exploration into the dirt that exists, and the necessity for explorations in this area is something that your practice around along with several other some other practices foreground. So I'm kind of trying to place this in relationship to several other works. Okay, while having done that, one question that comes to my mind, and because you started off with the idea of thinking about indigenous knowledges, and that your practice is interested in study and documentation, in revival, in research and development, as well as in terms of disseminating and advocating for this kind of practice, okay, around indigenous knowledges. What emerged through your presentation was a focus on techniques of construction, that emerged from indigenous knowledge. It was very, very, very kind of grounded in the different kinds of regions where you've been where your practice has been engaged in studies, in research, as well as advancing. But what also struck me was in indigenous thinking, in indigenous epistemologies, the idea of the technique is not separated from the social or the form of life that uh, you know uh, that one lives. It's never separated from that. At some point, you kind of mentioned it with the farmer building, the farmer's family building their own house. But what didn't kind of come out, and what I was kind of hoping that you would throw light on, is the form of life that kind of gets lives. Because what happens in architecture is when one thinks through material practices, through construction, through the technique, the idea of detail is largely focused on the, the technical know-hows. And that is seen as the kind of indigenous knowledge uh, to advance. Um, but indigenous life itself is not static. It is dynamic. And whether by indigenous in India we mean Adivasis, or you mean to use it broadly to consider several other indigenous practices. In both cases, the village is not static. The village is dynamic as a place and space. In our own studies along the west coast of India, particularly in Maharashtra,
Yeah, cool.
one realizes that a village which is actually seen as a place which is largely seen in architecture or kind of in popular imagination as as a place where not much is happening. There seems to be a lot of change around livelihoods, a lot of change around organizations of households, around ideas of property, around ideas of public space, so on and so forth, many other things. And these are things that are changing uh, in the villages. So while you want to kind of advance the idea of indigenous um, knowledge, I was kind of I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how do you see the form of life that in the villages that you kind of experience, what kind of changes are taking place, and how might the form of life and its detail itself contribute to the architectural exploration. Because beyond the technical, the material aspects of it, if one has to think through design questions in terms of, let's take the idea of the house itself as a space of exploration, wondering what is the imagination of home in many of these, and how can one kind of think of this as a form and space question beyond the material question. What kinds of explorations does do the changes that are now taking place, um, what kind of invitation they present to architects to explore beyond the technique itself. So it's kind of a broader thing I would like you to open out beyond the technical knowledges of construction, which you very powerfully and sharply opened out. So I think, I spoke a lot. I'll hold on to that one question, and maybe later on I might open up other questions. But for the audience, uh, please feel free to post questions in the question and answer box, or you can raise your hand and we'll invite you to join this conversation and ask your questions. In the meantime, I'll let Biju respond to my provocation.
Yeah. Um, Actually, what I am seeing as a practice, the first thing is what I understood, where I really understood is like in the beginning of my, days here in the villages. Even a village, somebody is doing a toilet, they are doing 4 pillars with concrete. So that is there coming up. It's like a huge impact is coming in every villages. So that also made me think about uh, is it because even a villager, nobody is not thinking without a word called cement. So that is not only about a cement, it is because of the availability. Because every village had a small lime kilns. Very interestingly, they used to go there and take the lime. Now every lime kilns are vanishing. So material availability, everything is different now. So slowly it is not, we can't tell them about that. We can only show them how we work or how things can work. So some very interesting feeling, because here mainly farmers comes to work with us, not masons or anything. Here, I think we have trained around 10 to 15 farmers. They know mostly all the techniques. So they come in their free period, work with us. When they see a tank uh, holding water without cement, that expression itself is very interesting. And we used to connect, stones with different mortars, and we will ask them to pull it up to know the pressure and strength of the lime or any other material, even mud. So that strongness will hold them, and it will take years. And what is happening positively is many persons, what we are seeing at least thousands of persons per year in Thannal campus. Most of them are actually willing to come back and live a life with nature. So we are seeing that impact in last 5 years. The rates are increasing, people are coming, doing their own homes, and they, of course, they some people connect with designers, some people do it by themselves, and they really enjoy doing their own home. So that is the situation even the villagers are also seeing. So slowly they are shifting. It will take little more time to understand, because that much time it took, uh, I think, from the after the independence time itself, India is seen. So slowly it will change. If the material and things are available for them easily, they will also do the same thing. So like that, many changes we can see. So this is not in the case of building also. If you see in Tamil Nadu here, even cultivation is also like that. So they put a lot of poisons in their crops and things like that. So it took a while to make them understand about organic farming again. And now it is happening. Now many villages are changing. So like that only it will happen in architecture also.
Very nice. I mean, that was a very interesting response that you gave, Biju. And really the debate that your practice kind of engages with, if I have to kind of put it in terms of the ongoing debates, are around, on the one hand, when you use the term concrete, you're really trying to refer to the idea of an architecture that of extraction of raw materials from distant places, and kind of building it. You getting this material from distant places, and therefore it not being sustainable in that sense. And therefore, what is the architecture of non-extraction? Therefore, the reliance on the local knowledges, so on and so forth. Um, Sorry, you don't agree with me? You want to point out to?
Not at all. It's
No, no, go, no,
when
go, go ahead. Please go ahead. I mean, I'm trying to kind of think through, because what was also very interesting in your presentation, the reason why I mentioned this, and what was also very interesting in your presentation, was that you didn't use a single drawing.
I didn't hear that.
Yeah, you didn't use a single drawing, which is very interesting, because the pedagogy, the discipline of.
If I have a stick, I can draw on the.
No, I'm not trying to refer to the fact that you can draw or not draw.
Yeah.
Is the fact that drawing as an output is not necessarily central to this form of practice. It's the exploration of the material process itself, um, into the actual working with hands, so on and so forth. What I would like you to talk a little bit about is that process of concept, from conceptualization to the building. So what goes into the activities that the architect does over here? What is the reliance on in terms of skill? Um, um, and I want you to, if you could speak about all the different areas. I mean, because there are, workshops, not only the practice of making buildings, but also workshops. So pedagogy, um, um, but also advocacy and dissemination. What are the skills that an architect has to embody then in this kind of practice, which could be drawings, but then what kind of drawings, or beyond drawings, what are the skills that the architect kind of um, develops while working in such a practice? Might be an interesting thing to open.
Yeah. The first thing, the architect, the basics for architecture students or architects are like, if you're working with in a land of acres or at least half an acre and things like that, you have to really understand about the land in the beginning. So that is a very understanding they have to, it's a very needed must thing, which we have to understand about the trees growing and understanding about the land typology. And second part only comes with understanding about mud and what is the mud available. Mostly what we are talking is taking mud from the same land. So we have to understand about the mud philosophy, how mud works. Because there is a very wrong conception that only red mud can be used in architecture. I don't know where it came from. Any mud can be used if you use it wisely. You can do homes, because if you see in every villages now also, there will be homes existing with different colors of mud. So it's not only red. So we have to know about the understanding about mud. Then very importantly, you have to know about the plants and animal derivatives of understanding which gums can be used with the mixers, like what is the starch used here, what are the cultivations happening. So the interesting part of that comes actually while traveling in the villages. If you see the natural fencing itself, you will understand about the plants, because there are very interesting plants varieties which you can really mingle that in architecture, because many plants, termites and nothing will get affected. I mean, many fencing. So it will sustain for years. So it all starts from the language of the village itself. It is slowly vanishing. We wish it will sustain, I mean, more. So maximum part is understanding that is where the documentation part is very important here. So to know that, to do that with the knowledge and preserve it, so that next generation will understand this type of plans and all can be used in architecture also. So like that, that knowledge of land, understanding mud, water sources, how water retaining and things like that, then comes to the, and which area they have to build. From there, it all starts, like what is the need for a person. So actually we have, what we used to tell them is like, in your land, don't go and stay in a rented place and come to the land. Instead, we ask the owners to live inside the land in a hut or something. Like that is where the thatch part comes. We have shown that thatch area, no? So what I usually call it is like from leaves to mud. So first, very simple method, you can do it within 1 week, 2 week, very interesting structures using thatch. Then you can start living inside and understanding the land. That even a designer can also do that. Then slowly start doing the first sketches of plants, because you can take any shapes with mud, because mud is really fluid. So that is the amazing part with mud. So, and when the plants or anything starts, and what is the roof you are going to have for the building. So that roof weight is very important while you are considering the wall systems. So different roof varieties are there. So if you are choosing that roof, then we start designing about the strength. And it's very important, even a civil engineering aspects, like how the building stands and things like that. So giving it in a, I mean, buttress walls, columns, pillars, things like that. And getting into, after that, it is very important, which not only understanding the mud and things, who is going to work. According to that, we have to choose the methods also. So cob and all, any people can place. We really need a simple mason or something to cut, or they can study by themselves how to clean up the walls and things like that. So if you have a mason, adobe walls will be great, because you can do bricks out of it and masons can keep it. So like that, it comes to the design. Then comes finishing part, or even in India, we can't get lime like in the shops or like cement. So we have to find a kiln in the beginning to understand where to get really nice limes. So we have to talk to the kiln people and make him understand this is for this type of things. So we need good, strong lime for the building. So like that, we are relating to the land as well as to the earth and the materials and the nearby community, and slowly getting into the process.
Nice to hear that. I will open up this discussion to comments and questions from the audience, and we have three of them over here, and the first two are by Uma Jadhav, who's an architect, and Uma writes, good evening. My question is, with growing concerns of topsoil degradation and runoff and growing population, even if I'm a great fan of this technology and structures, what do you think is the future of this technology? I'm kind of placing it in the context of uh, densification of the villages that you might be engaging with, and then what are the potentials, and if as a practice of engaged in research and documentation, and as well as development in terms of uh, ideas for the future, what kind of forward thinking may have gone into your work already, or it has something like this happened? How can we kind of take this
I
further?
think
She also
yes,
further
written.
writes, um, in an era of commercialization, I think reuse of modern waste in building construction can also be called as a part of sustainable practices. Only its effect on space and health should be researched and explored. She says, I'm sorry for diverting this topic, but I thought so that's also a very interesting proposition to think about sustainability, the possibility of reuse of existing materials, how much ever one might think they may be unsustainable too. So yeah, it will be nice to hear your thoughts on both these questions that Uma asked.
Yeah, first I will answer her with the topsoil degradation. A lot of work has to be happen, and it is happening positively also very nicely. Uh, this technology, do you think is a future of this technology? See, this is a classic technology. It is there for thousands and thousands of years. It is not going to vanish at all. It will, somebody will take it up and do it. It's not going to fade at all. It will be more and more. You can see the positiveness in coming years. We are so positive about that change in architecture. Then commercialization, I think reuse of modern waste is really fine. So here, what you have to know is there are two types of waste we also consider in our research and things like that. One is from the industrial waste, and the second is from the food. Cultivation, so our studies of pozzolana in the research is more based to it. Nowadays, last 2 months before we started working with GGBS, it's a slug, what we call, it's from the iron factory, what's the waste. So what happened when lime and GGBS combines means we have casted a beam and we have given it for testing also. We are getting amazing result. So that we have casted with bamboo reinforcement. So that much waste is there in there. This can accelerate the process actually. So we are finding very interesting, and it is coming up in coming days. We can even, article will be published with that. So there are many different waste. One waste is rice husk ash, because huge rice husk ash is available. Another waste is surki itself, like brick powder after burning. Many, it's actually, they are giving it for free because nobody is taking. These all waste are reused actually. So in urban, one more thing I should notice, to others, is like many people ask me, in urban scenario, what we can do. So that is where wattle and dub and very interesting technology with less mud is very applicable. And nowadays in Delhi and all, people have started after studying from here. They used to do home above their terrace with wattle and dub technologies. Many interesting rooms and studios are coming like that. So what I see in that part, even when you really check on your highway roads, it's very sad. I can see people are building big, mall or big shopping complex in wherever the roads are coming. And this road height will be more. And the fillings are using mud. They are not using any concrete or anything. So this is actually a gold. People are not aware in urban scenario how much mud they are wasting. So that type of mud and all, if you, I think you can do big houses in urban scenario itself.
Nice. There are several other questions, but we also have an attendee who's raised their hand. Joel, can you draw in the Dushyant? Can you get Dushyant to join us here and let Dushyant ask the questions that he wants to, or comments that he has?
Yes, Rohit, yes. Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Namaste.
Hi. Hi, Biju. Namaste.
Namaste.
So it was quite nice to see the parallels. I think Rohit has already made that point, but parallels between pedagogy, connecting to the larger community, and also sort of building at the same time. Now, what was fascinating for me is to see people from different professions, from different kind of expertise, like farmers or maybe firefighters or other people, to come and join this process, and also take the skills back and do something for their own selves. Now, the for me the curiosity was is what draws people to say building with these materials or mud per se in specific as compared to say concrete or steel. Why does this kind of materials or natural building processes draw in that kind of participation? At the same time, when we, like for example, the base material, like farmers joining in, they have a sense of all of these materials. I can understand that they joining say uh, for your team, like when they joined your team for to join the team to make buildings. Um, but on the other hand, now the other part of the question is when you gave examples of buildings being built in Delhi or other urban areas, what are the economical networks that it operates on currently? And if it were to sort of scale in a particular manner. I'm not saying you make build cities of mud, but scale up to a certain level where it is say practiced by many. What kind of economical network would it require, and what kind of other, like for example, sourcing these materials that you probably use, how it can be thought of in terms of accessibility, or is there currently a network which provides for this? So I and or like the question is that can it go beyond the domesticity that it currently is kind of comfortable in? So I mean, these are the two questions that I had.
Yeah. Okay. Uh, I think it, it will take a little more time in urban scenario because of availability of material. But mud will be available. Still now we haven't seen any difficulties like that where others were doing. Because they used to, talk to the contractor, any contractors, they will provide that mud. Lime is coming up. It's reviving very interestingly, and now we can see in many places like Bangalore and other areas like Chennai and things like that. What we are getting news is lime is in demand. So they are taking it from the outskirts and bringing it to urban scenario. So I think if the need is more, one example is Hosur itself, like near Bangalore. Even the lime rate changes because many people came here, studied, and start doing. The lime people started increasing the rate. So that itself shows that it's in a positive move. And other parts are like bricks and all. We can get it in urban scenario. So I mean Surki and all. What I meant bricks means Surki. So burnt clay. So things will happen like that. So does it answer my your question?
This I mean, I'm also referring to the, like it's a very artisanal practice right now.
Mm-hmm.
People come and they learn, and again relating to the first part of the question, where like what draws them to come to this, because right now you can see the networks are quite interestingly, who want to come to a context of a village, or who want to have a life to live in a particular way. I think for them, I think it's easier to come and participate. uh, but and I also am interested in, like I would say that this is almost like cooking a building, no? You mix a few
Correct.
materials
Correct.
together and build it. But I was specifically curious about what draws these kind of people to do. Is it with the association that you have with these materials, or is it that you already are, like, for example, farmers know mud very well, or maybe some other people know some material? So is it that association that brings them to this, or is it the kind of comfort of knowing these things that kind of brings them over here? Like, what builds this community for, like, apart from students who join the courses, the one who really are coming from different backgrounds?
That is the beauty about this. Every walk of life, many different characters and different people, even shopkeepers, many different characters, advocates, doctors, policemen, all come to study here. So that is one interesting part. This is like a grandma story. Those who like a grandma story, it is there within, inside. So when they come here and start exploring themselves, they will start saying about their olden days and things like that, where they live. They have seen structures like this. My grandma used to live in that type of houses, things like that. And many of them are actually from the background of natural living, actually. They want to practice natural living. So architecture, food, medicine, and all is a part of natural living, even the clothing. So many want to take that step. Slowly they revert back. So they come and learn this type of activities. That is what it's driving like.
Yeah, I mean, that's nice. But I think what, Biju, what Dushyant was trying to refer to was that the building of a house involves labor. The construction of a house involves labor. And in the current context, one finds in many villages which are transforming, there are pressures, the real pressures, where earlier people who build their own houses are now being built by others, because you want to move away from that labor, and your labor gets you use your labor in doing other things, and those are real pleasure, like um, uh, like a certain kind of construction may take more time, and therefore you kind of I'll give you an example of an indigenous practice that we are studying right now in Bombay and in the national park. An indigenous group that would build in um, with sticks from the forest and mud, and the weave of the roof, which that you kind of showed, has completely moved towards building with tin sheets.
Okay.
No, I'm speaking of the case over here, because the question over there is of labor, of building the house. The real pressures of finding work and earning money, and one may rather not, according to them, not build this house, which has to be done year after year, and therefore move away to do other kinds of things. So those become real pressures. But on the other hand, so the material has shifted in this case, in this particular case that I'm talking about, but the practice of the household building the house, and in this particular case, um, um, both the 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 man's house, particularly houses get built during the times of marriages. The woman's family which comes to build a house in this particular form of culture. So that has remained constant. The material has changed because there are the real pressures of trying to actually living it year after year. So what Dushyant is trying to draw attention to, I think, is the fact that do the people who come to study or to learn from your practice, your pedagogical practice, um, do they belong to a particular class? Is there a particular class orientation that one sees in the kind of people who are coming to learn and advance this form of construction? I think that's one thing. The second thing is that in my example itself, there are many instances that we are finding out of women not wanting to marry from the Adivasi groups, not wanting to marry to men who are living uh, in houses of 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 wood sticks and mud. And in this case, the tin house becomes important for you to be able to marry. So materials also index development in certain kind of contexts. Mud and wood kind of gets seen in a particular way of indexing a certain kind of development emerging from popular perceptions. But what seems to be emerging here, and trying to kind of build on Dushan's question, is there a particular class orientation now that aspires to these kind of houses? So I'm just trying to kind of take this a little further and would love to hear your thoughts around this.
Yeah, I understood. The thing is like those who, that's where I told you, those who are really want to know about natural living is the class of people, we can say. They are coming, they are interested. So what in labor wise also, there are problems in many places because many doesn't get labor properly and things like that. So we have seen different cases like that. So many people, actually opposite case also we have seen. We have now 3 different masons from different parts, from Bengal as well as Kerala. And actually some masons really call us and they tell us they want to study this art because now people want it. So we don't know, can you teach us? So like that, 3 or 4 masons are studying from here. So there are cases like that also. So it's not about a class and things like that. That is where this all comes from. See, a natural building is, the typology is like from the poor as well as to the Rajas have used natural buildings. So different methods and different things, you don't have to redo it and all. Years and years it will stay. If you see palaces and things like that. Or there are different methods in Chettinad or Chettinad plasters, what you have seen, years it has been stayed. So there are different things. Now you can take which one you want or to do from that. In few cases, what we have seen is they want only thatch. So there are different classes in that. So they need bigger walls and big thick walls like that. Even natural building, if you are doing it with bricks or laterites also, it's a natural building. Even stones are natural building, not only mud. So there are different fusions also is possible.
Yeah, I mean, I hear the point, that making in the sense that there are different.
So my point is one more thing. Now what you are, I mean, people are not getting married, things are there, that will be there, but there might be a change for that also.
Yeah, I get
So
it.
yeah, so there will be a positive move in that type of cases. Think after 10 years, if there is a mud house, I will marry. It will come like that means?
No, I mean, and in that sense, your focus in terms of like the really kind of expansive understanding of practice, which also involves advocacy and dissemination, is something that is very, very important. And in kind of, bringing about this change, I think questions around advocacy and dissemination, and how it ought to be done, what are the modes, how is it that is books the one, is YouTube channels the one, or there should be many other forms of imaginative modes that we ought to think about. So how do we kind of think about who's the audience and how should we reach to them, uh, in terms of advocating, the advocacy and dissemination of a particular kind of value that you want to advance through your explorations into materials. So it's something to possibly think about. I'll go ahead. There's a number of times that you mentioned natural buildings, and we have an anonymous attendee over here who is asking, uh, what can be defined as natural building according to you? I think also kind of to extend that question a little bit is that in if the focus is on indigeneity, in indigenous epistemologies, the distinction between what is natural and what is not natural is a complicated um, area of thought, in the sense that um, different kinds of species, all of them are thought to have a persona and therefore also a soul, and therefore belong, have personhood in them. That there is something called as nature outside the human is something that sits uncomfortably. I think that question is directed towards that. If you could kind of open this out a little bit, I'll also kind of add two more questions that the anonymous attendee has kind of raised over here. In the age of cartographic drawings and uh, like so there is a proliferation of the reliance on the cartographic drawing today. The anonymous attendee asks, what sort of drawing methods are used in these cases in order to specify details? For example, we have working drawings to specify building details. So what are they in this case? Or rather, is there any need for one? And to extend that question again to, in your whole practice of study and documentation, what is the form of drawing that one engages with, and why is that the case? And the third question that the two more questions that the anonymous attendee asks, and you can take all of the four of them together. The third one is, most of the constructions were not multi-story. Does this traditional method have room to have more floors? So again, the question of densities and the question of mass that Dushyant kind of posed earlier over here. A similar question, I'll kind of club that with another uh, uh, member of the audience, Mansi Bangera, who asked similarly, in regard to your focus on natural housing, is there a way such homes could function and become a norm in urban areas as well, with large population and demands? So the question of the mass is kind of really something that people want to kind of, what we saw in the presentation were individual houses, but what would happen when this is turned into a question of the mass is kind of is being posed over here. And the final question of the anonymous attendee is, As shown in the presentation, every house was unique, complementing its surroundings. It had a utility with an artistic and skilled touch. If these houses were to enter the urban sphere, how can they maintain their identity without getting too commercialized? So yeah, I mean, it's a lot to kind of think through.
Yeah.
But these four questions, if we could kind of
Yeah, drawing wise and each documentation, if you are going and seeing, it's all there in our blog itself. So we use very different types of drawings. You can see there, you can find each home, even how the roof drawings, wall drawings, sections, everything you can find it in the blog itself. I mean, in the article section, you can see. So you can study from there what we have gone through, all those drawings or working drawings. You can see there itself. And multi-story, second question, does this traditional method have room to have more floors? Of course. You have to see even in Chettinad as well as in Jharkhand and all, you can see 3 or 4 floors home. As well as in Yemen, you can see 10 story structures. It's called there is a very interesting documentation in YouTube. I mean documentary. It's almost 1.5 hours. How they have done from foundation to 10-story with walls and completely plastering methods, even lime beating, and everything is shown in that documentary. Yemen. So the another one, the presentation, every house was unique. It's skill touch. If these houses were enter the urban sphere, how can they maintain their identity without getting too commercialized? Be simple. It will have its own identity, because the material will show its own identity. So it's like that. I think you are you hearing me properly? There is one more comment I can see. Little loud.
I mean, I can hear, I don't know, we
Yeah,
just received a comment saying that, to me particularly, that I'm not loud enough. So I'll address that, I'll kind of be louder. But I think, yeah, so, yeah, and I'm receiving other comments that my voice is just fine. So, um, um,
I think one more thing, what I want to see in our website itself, everything is open. You can actually go and visit and study. You can have a look. If you go through it only, you will understand about the process, like how a building, even drawings, many interesting drawings and working drawings and all are there in the articles.
we have one more hand which is kind of raised up. Joel, can we draw Mr. Shah into this conversation, please?
Yes, sir.
Hi, yeah, Mr. Shah. Yeah, you can make your comment or pose your question. Can you hear us? We heard your voice briefly, and then there was silence. There is in the mean. Can you hear us, Mr. Shah? In the meantime, I mean, let's kind of, Joel, can you get Uma Jadhav too into the conversation? There is a question that she's posed, which I've not understood. So we'll allow her to pose the question to Biju. The question is about the use of topsoil as a part of this technology, and can we advise it? I kind of didn't get that question. So can you, I mean, if she would like to join in asking this question. Joel, can you get her in the meantime?
Yes, yes.
Hi, Uma. Would you like to, elaborate on your question a bit? I don't think she's there.
The question is like topsoil. Can we use topsoil?
I didn't understand. Can you advise that part? I didn't understand in the question.
Actually,
Mr. Shah, can you hear us?
Hello.
Yeah, hi, Uma. Yeah.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, I was mute, I guess. Okay, so actually my question is, for this particular technology, mud house.
Yeah.
The mud is a soil, it's a topsoil, right?
No.
And when our okay, is there some misunderstanding?
You continue. I will tell after your question. Yeah, please.
Yeah. So it's like ours is agrarian, it's like agriculture-based economy, even today. So topsoil is very important. Right now, the quality of topsoil is going down, and there is a lot of runoff which is happening. And it's like it's a growing concern right now. And then if we are going to promote this technology and going to use the topsoil, then what will happen? I mean, my question was related to the topsoil and the use of.
I got it. So can I answer?
Yes, please.
Yeah, the thing is like in our class itself, like mud class happened, the first thing what we teach is don't touch topsoil. That's a must. Whenever you are taking a sample of soil, what we have to do is like remove the topsoil and keep it apart so that you can reuse it for agriculture again. And below topsoil, you start digging and start understanding your layers of mud, but not the topsoil.
So what is the depth we are looking at from, because it is said that up to 12 inches, 15 inches, the entire layer could be called as
upon
topsoil.
the land, like which land it has been worked, or it depends upon the practices of the previous owner or the owners. Some places you can't see that. Some places you will see a lot of rich, even 1 feet you can see topsoil. So some place it will be lesser. So you have to understand that and take it out. From after removing the topsoil, you started analyzing your mud.
Okay, thank you. That I mean that always used to be my worry and the question that we are saying something, but if this, because I myself like this particular technology, and if it it's like becomes popular in coming future, what will happen to it's like soil is food for us right now.
Yeah.
We cannot just go on using it now. So thank you for answering that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Uma. Mr. Shah, would you like to?
Am I audible, sir, right now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So my question is for both Mr. Bhaskar also and yourself. In the sense that I'm thankful that though I'm not connected with this field, but what I learned was the way the traditional technology, the methods on which Mr. Bhaskar is working on, and he wants to let more people learn about it. And even the college, my daughter is studying in a college, and what the efforts he is taking, it's really appreciating. But my concern, one more thing is that few days back I just was discussing with my daughter that you have the 6 months or 8 months some practical learning experiences. It's not. I mean personally, it's my is it sufficient for a professional architect that practical knowledge of 8 months? So my question was that does, because I seen in the slides that Mr. Bhaskar, some workshop where the students were participating in. So does he have a room for a such kind of learning where, students learn every year as per in sync with your syllabus every year? Students go for a few days under Mr. Bhaskar, they learn certain in sync with your first year's syllabus. Again, second year they go. So in the phase where they are learning practical something, and it enriches their knowledge.
Okay. Bhaskar, would you like to respond?
It was quite fast for me personally.
No, the question was, the question that was posed was, in architectural education, the period of practical learning, which is called as internship, is usually for 4 months, like 120 working days. Okay. Mr. Shah is asking us, do you think that is enough? And he's asking both you and me this question. Should students not be learning more in terms of practical learning, in terms of practice through the internship? Okay.
Yeah, it's a good question.
So would you like to go to respond to that? And I'll come after you. Yeah.
I think that depends upon the person who understands the phenomena, but obviously it will need some time to understand. But you can get a very basic phenomena of many mixers and understanding basic knowledge and all. This 4 months is more than enough. Then actually they have to practice, because all these people go to a volunteering section, like next part, to other sites or things, and they carry forward their studies. And we used to mentor them. So it takes like 1 year, 2 years for some people to understand and get into practices. So it's really nice for them after the internship if they carry to other sites, like really practicing sites. And many places volunteering are open. So they can go there, work again there, and learn by themselves different methods and different types of soils and things like that.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
So Biju tells us that the more time would be required. But it's actually nice to have you here, Mr. Shah, a student's parent, kind of taking an interest in this conversation and posing such a question. I'd like to answer it a little differently. At the School of Environmental Architecture, there is an understanding amongst us as its faculty. We don't create this separation, or we don't imagine this separation between pedagogy and practice. All of us, and the curriculum at C poses questions for exploration that are real questions for practice in all of its years. And these are questions of practice that the pedagogues at C, the academic practitioners at C, are individually involved in exploring. So there is a practice from an academic space is what we imagine. And this practice from the academic space is posing new questions that architects ought to consider. That's point number one. That's how we see the space of pedagogy. That's point number one. Point number two is internship, or the space of practical learning. If you see the curriculum at C, you will find that design, conceptual thinking of design, and exploration into space and form, and learning about technical knowledges, you'll find in most courses now they go hand in hand. it is not as if there is a subject of design, of exploration of form and space, and there's another subject that is the practical learning, which is about technical exposition. So that is something that the School of Environment and Architecture has done away with. But the third point in terms of thinking about the conceptualization of the internship is that the question that we ask ourselves, and very seriously as faculty from the School of Environment and Architecture, is what is the role of the academia? Is it to produce architects to fill up the offices? Or is it to kind of create individuals who would engage themselves in relevant explorations? Number one. And number two is these individuals who go through the pedagogy or see, how would they imagine their practice by asking, in asking those relevant questions, but also get into a conversation with other kinds of practices that already exist. And this particular forum over here of C Conversations is essentially meant for that. It is meant for drawing all of us, students, faculty, all of us, drawing ourselves into conversation with practices that seem to be asking relevant, meaningful questions, to learn from them, but also kind of, while learning from them, posing new questions. I think that as an academic space is something which we are very serious about. And finally, the last point is whether 4 months is less. I mean, a whole life spent in architecture could be less, and always learning new things. So there is, I mean, if one sees.
My question was, once they are professional, I don't want that the moment they are out with a degree and they term themselves architect and start working, because it's, after all, it's the houses and lifelong earnings are getting into one's house. So it should be something, where they really feel they are contributing, means not only to an individual or house, but to the society and to the world as large, because they're learning. What I really appreciate, because from the day one, when online classes, I used to see Prasad saying, you ask questions. And it is really good, means I appreciate. But only the concern was, means then they are, sorry, it's a bit off track, but there is concerns raised that the engineers are doing the work of architects, and there is a conflict, whatever my understanding, little bit, I do not know much. So I always tell her that you should look upon that profession as a different. Your architects and engineers complement each other. So the day you start looking in that perspective, automatically things will work out better in a long run, and you can exchange knowledge. I'm not much aware of it. So there was a challenge that you should know the basics, and practically you should try to understand. And the more you have the practical knowledge, you'll be in a better position to understand the other person's viewpoint. That was the concern.
Thanks for your comment, Mr. Shah. I think that kind of is something really very important to think about. But I'll pose it like this, and I'll pose it with thanking Biju for this talk. It kind of has opened us to several facets that are very important. One is that we share with you, Biju, from C, we share that this broadened imagination of practice, where it is not the building itself, but an expanded notion of practice. And those 5 areas that you opened up in terms of thinking is something that we share as an imagination for thinking about practice. And connecting to this last comment of Mr. Shah, what I take away from this talk really is there seems to be a split between the imagination of the practical and the conceptual, the techne and the imagination of space. And I'm wondering if in the future, in terms of thinking about this pedagogy, where you are inviting um, um, people who may be architects, but also masons and lay people and all kinds of people into this pedagogical space, and thereby proliferating the number of possible interventions that could be made, not limiting it to your own design. And at sea, there is similarly, we've kind of, trying to build on this idea of open pedagogy, where students or kind of learners or uh, autodidacts who want to participate in asking their own questions need not be limited by the background that they come from, in terms of the disciplinary background they come from. We want to have that open, expanded space, and it's something that we are building towards. Okay. I'm wondering that whether for such spaces, the question to ask for pedagogy is how can we move away from this dichotomy or this dualism of the techne or the practical or the technical knowledges, the knowledges of construction and knowledges about the spaces of life, what kind of other knowledges that we require as architects beyond the technical knowledges that may seem very relevant today. It's something that kind of I take away from this talk today as a question to kind of think about a longer period of time. So those were my thoughts. Thank you, Biju, once again for this conversation. If you would like to kind of make a closing comment, otherwise we'll draw this session to a close. It's been, we've really had a long conversation after your presentation. It's almost been 1 hour, 15 minutes of the conversation after your presentation.
It is nice that at least there are many questions, and we are very much used up with that questions every day in our life here in the village also. We used to spend a lot of time answering that. So it is really thanks to C and all the people who have listened and things like that. And very much thank you to all. Namaste.
So thank you, Biju. Thank you for being in conversation with us. It was a pleasure to have you in this conversation. We would like to be in further conversations with you as and when opportunities arise. We'll keep you informed about that. And if you want to get in touch with us at any point in time, we're always open. Do stay in touch. Thanks a lot. I would also like to thank the Shama Foundation, who's been involved in supporting this program and co-curating, along with the Urban Center, whose ongoing support over the years we have been receiving in advancing this very important aspect, which is central to our pedagogy at C. Thank you so much. And the next C series, C City conversation will be after a fortnight, and we'll keep you posted about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Lovely to have you.